Hi, I'm Justin McElroy, CBC's Municipal Affairs reporter. This is going to be a long and dry summer in British Columbia, according to all forecasts, and the provincial government is very worried. Mark, roll the clip.
Consider taking shorter showers. Only do full loads of dishes and laundry. Water your lawn sparingly.
That's Bowen Ma, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness in British Columbia. The province having an all-hands-on-deck approach to communication yesterday, saying that the situation is going to be serious this summer, not just for droughts, but for wildfires. They're warning people that water restrictions are going to be coming, that they're going to be very large, that they could be more encompassing than we've seen in a long, long time. And there's a lot of different reasons for this. And people might be wondering, well, so far in southern British Columbia, there haven't been a lot of fires. The weather has been hot, but we haven't seen a heat dome yet. But still, Bowen Ma is saying that this is something where one can expect serious measures coming soon. Roll the next clip.
Many communities are implementing water restrictions already. We anticipate the need to escalate those water restrictions in larger areas of the province. And just for context, the drought situation is serious. We have not experienced this level of widespread drought across the province this early in the year in recent memory.
So we want to take some of your questions as to if you're wondering why the province is considering these restrictions, what you're worried about this summer when it comes to droughts and wildfires. Feel free to put those into the YouTube comments and we'll try and get to some of your questions. But let's take a look at the numbers as to why the province is this worried this early in the year, despite the lack of wildfires in the southern part of British Columbia. We've got a bunch of charts that we can show you on this. So this began in the wintertime and in the spring. This is a map that the province shows of the Basin Snow Water Index, basically the amount of water that is expected in all of on the mountains at this time of the year, June 15th, compared to the normal. And you can see if it's 100%, then it should be blue. 0 to 49% is the brown. And basically the entire province was brown in the middle of June. 0% virtually everywhere, including Vancouver Island, the Lower Mainland, most of the interior. There's not a single place in the province where in the middle of June where our snow water index was where the province typically wants it to be. And it wasn't just on the mountains, it was with the soil as well. Here is in May, their measurement of exactly how wet or dry the soil is compared to normal at this time of the year. And you can see when it's comparatively wet, it's blue or green. When it's sort of average, it's white. When it's dry, it's yellow. When it's really dry, it's orange. And you can see there's some places, particularly on Vancouver Island, again in the Lower Mainland and up in the Peace region, where it's the driest, second or third driest that the soil has ever been in the middle of May. And we haven't got much rain since that time. So again, this is what the wildfire rating in British Columbia was like at the end of May. You can see even at that time, there were large parts of the province where it was already higher extreme, particularly in the north. And this is just yesterday, and you take a look, the entire Vancouver Island virtually is at extreme. Most of the province at this point is somewhere in the high or moderate. And again, we're not seeing a lot of moisture coming on the radar anytime soon. And already it's been a very, very hot year full of wildfires. We're just in the middle of July. And look, we are already at the third highest amount of square kilometers burned in this province for a wildfire season in the last 50 years. 2018, 2017, 2021, the top four, all within the last 6 years in British Columbia. But when you look at where it is, and I'll just step a little bit away there so you can take a look. This is BC wildfire regions by square kilometer, and the chart shows that Prince George has so many more square kilometers burned, it goes off of the screen. But you can see 11,095 square kilometers in the Prince George region have burned so far this year. That's anywhere Prince George and north, so in the northern part of the province. In the northwest, it's just 438. Caribou, coastal, Kamloops, and southeast, it doesn't even register compared to the northern part. So we've been comparatively lucky in a sense that so far this year, the places where wildfires have happened have been in the areas of the province that are the least densely populated by far. But when you look at a typical year, say 2021, We saw in Kamloops that year, that was the year of the Lytton wildfire, where there were lots of evacuation orders around the Caribou, around Kamloops, around the Okanagan, which is where that wildfire region is. 4,975 square kilometers burned that year. So far this year in that fire region, it's just 18. And that can change over the next couple months. And so that's why the province is worried there for wildfires in addition to droughts as well. One final chart. This is the total source of Metro Vancouver water, what's available in the reservoirs for us as we look at what restrictions might come in place. And you can see that red line 2023, it's about near the top of where we would expect at this point. But again, with the water basins being so low to begin with the drought that we've already seen, with what the forecasts are at this point, forecasters are expecting that to trend down heavily very soon, and it's why we're talking about water restrictions so early. But to give a better sense of exactly why this is happening and what to be worried about, joined now by Darius Mahdavi. He's our science specialist. Darius, thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I guess when you look at all of those charts, all of that data that we've seen, what stands out to you as particular things that people in this province should be worried about, or why this year was more concerning compared to previous years?
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start. You know, I've been following this all year and seeing it all in a row like that. Yeah, we're not looking at a great year, to be sure. What we're looking at here, so if we go to the very first chart, the snowmelt chart, we're currently sitting at around 4% of where we usually are this time of year in BC. And a lot of our snowmelt reservoirs are at zero. They're completely used up. Compare that to last year, we were sitting at almost double where we usually are this time of year.
Can we take a look at that soil chart, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
And that will, so look at all that brown.
Yeah, we're looking at some serious drought this year, absolutely. These are some of the driest numbers that we've ever seen. You can see most of the province is in the top 3 driest it's ever been, and a lot of the other places are in the top 10. We just haven't really seen anything like this decades ago. The last decade or so, though, it's been more and more common. What we really need to be worried about, though, is just a complete dry out of the soil, which is what we're seeing. And then if we see extreme rainfall in the next couple months, which, you know, we are hoping for some consistent moderate rainfall, but if we see just some extreme rain events, that's going to bring back a risk of flooding. So if you remember back in May, we were looking at those extreme watches and warnings in terms of flood risk, and those sort of went away as our snow melt all disappeared. We're going to see those come back if we get these extreme rainfall events in the next couple months.
Well, we're joined live by Darius Mahdavi, our new science specialist here at CBC Vancouver, taking your questions on the drought, the wildfire risk raised by the government yesterday. The campfire ban was put in place. They heavily hinted that water restrictions could be coming, possibly announced as soon as later this week, early next. If you have any questions for Darius, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll try and get to them. I know during the wintertime when people were talking about what could be forecast for this year, El Nino was raised as part of the factors that we would have to consider. Is this what we're seeing here?
It's a great question, and I think this is something that's going to be coming up a lot over the next couple months as we see, you know, typically drier, hotter conditions, which is what we're forecasted to have, and those are conditions that are associated with El Nino. We talk a lot about how El Nino typically brings hotter years. But in BC, that's not really what we see, especially in the summer. We get more mild winters, but not so much in the summertime. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that the drought that we're seeing this year, the hot temperatures, those likely aren't El Nino. What I will say is that as we head into the winter months, we could be looking at drought next year as well, because we're going to be getting likely a more mild winter, less snowfall, which means we'll have even less snowfall reserves next year as we head into it. But this year, I wouldn't go as far as saying, like, remember, El Nino has just started. The World Meteorological Organization just said that we're in El Nino last week. So we really haven't had time for it to ramp up and start to affect our local climate here in BC.
Good, so we still got time to ramp up with the fun times, right?
Yeah. So not this year. We'll wait and see for next year. But despite it not being El Nino, the Environment Canada has forecasted that we're going to see we're almost certainly going to see hotter conditions than usual throughout northern BC, much of the interior. Very likely to see that here on the south coast as well. And throughout the entire south coast and up into the central coast, we're likely going to see a drier season than usual, which is what we've seen already, right? May was our hottest May on record for all of BC, and we had our longest dry stretch on record here at YVR.
And you talked about the soil and how dry it is already, and we're not going to get relief. So what impacts does that mean for just the folks in these communities, particularly if they do stuff in ranching and agriculture, of what they're looking at and what could be on the table come August and September?
It is looking to be a difficult one. I know that the government has been looking at some relief in terms of providing some feedstock for a couple weeks to try and ease the burden, but I mean, agriculture requires a ton of water, and it's not looking like we're just going to have those reserves. So I know that a lot of people are worried about what they're looking towards over the next couple months. What we're really hoping for is some sustained moderate levels of rainfall. Again, we don't want those extreme rainfall events because when the ground is so dried out, it just sort of washes over. It doesn't get absorbed, and that doesn't alleviate our fire risk. It doesn't bring our drought levels down. We need sustained rainfall, so that's what we're hoping for. It's possible over the next couple months. That'll be what brings people relief. But
it has to be the right type of rain.
Exactly. Yeah, we need these long, sustained rainfall events, not torrential downpours. That would be the opposite of helpful. That's what brings our flash flooding risk back.
Well, we need some help. We've gotten some questions from people about what the province is trying to do in terms of these restrictions. We've got Mark asking, should there be blanket rules on campfires across the province, regardless of current conditions? Because, again, some people living in the Lower Mainland wondering, look, this is a typical summer so far. I don't see smoke. I don't see wildfires. Why can't my campfire be in place? What would you say to that?
I would say that... So first, I'll say we have had a mild start to the wildfire season in the Lower Mainland. We have not really had a typical summer, right? We've seen hotter temperatures, well above seasonal, for pretty much the entire season, and we are at a really high wildfire risk. So remember, a wildfire risk is not related to how many wildfires we've seen already this year. It's really a measure of how likely we are to get more wildfires in the coming days, the coming weeks, and these things take a long time to change. So since we had a particularly dry and hot May and June, that sort of wildfire risk translates over the next couple months. The wildfire danger maps that we see, you showed a few of them, that red area, that can change in a matter of days if we see some great rainfall, but it'll change back in a matter of days as well. So these sort of campfire bans, I don't know if people saw, last week they were lifted for a few days, and then as soon as we saw these high temperatures likely to come back towards the end of this week, they had to be put back in place. So the fire danger forecasters are very careful to make sure, not to put fire bans in place when they're not needed, but we also need to be careful to make sure that we put them in place early enough that people are aware before they head out that those bans are going to be in place while they're out there. So,
it's fair to say that the province is taking a pretty proactive approach on this, though.
Which is what we need, absolutely. Because at the beginning of this wildfire season, like you said, most of the fires have been concentrated in the north, but they have been really bad. Just in May this year, we saw we saw more area burned than in most entire wildfire seasons, and that was just in really the first month. So we have been getting they have been coming down over the last, through June and into July, but we are at a risk of a record-breaking end to the wildfire season if we don't be extra cautious.
Ominous times. We'll have to see what happens in the next couple months. Rain, but the right type of rain, as you said. Darius, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thank all of you for watching and listening to us talk about where BC is at right now with our drought and wildfire dual threats in this fun summer. Thanks again for listening and watching, and continue to go to cbc.ca/BC for all your news on this season. Thanks.